It's better. No, it might spill. Just put it. Yeah, yeah.
So when you're ready, we're ready. Okay?
Right. President Ruto, we're waiting. Yeah, we'll wait for him. We're waiting for him to get. Everybody ready?
We are, Mr.
We're just waiting for President Ruto to come in. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I wish to thank President Macron for inviting all of us to the new Global Financing Pact Summit. I'm grateful as well to the Paris Club Forum for the opportunity. Thank you very much, my dear brother, to host this very important side event at the margins of the summit. Welcome to the Presidential Dialogue on the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa. It is such a wonderful honor to have Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, here with us, as well as presidents of multilateral financial institutions, the CEOs of financial institutions, of private equity funds, as well as leaders of bilateral organizations and philanthropies. And of course, I'm absolutely delighted we also have project developers. Why are we gathering here this afternoon? We're gathering this afternoon to discuss the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, otherwise called AGIA, a new and transformative initiative to mobilize $10 billion in support of green infrastructure in Africa. It is an initiative jointly put together by the African Development Bank, the African Union, and Africa 50, and several other development partners, and of course, philanthropies. Your Excellencies, one of the major constraints to Africa's accelerated development is the lack of infrastructure needed at scale to fast-track, spur faster growth, and transform our economies. Africa's infrastructure financing gap is estimated at $113 to $147 billion annually. Now, because most of the infrastructure for Africa is yet to be built, that presents a unique opportunity to start green or green the existing infrastructure. Given Africa's susceptibility to climate change impacts arising from floods and cyclones and so on, Africa's infrastructure also needs, therefore, to be made more climate resilient. Greening the infrastructure space will position Africa to tap into $522 billion of green bonds globally, for which Africa accounts for only 0.4%. Literally almost nothing. Your Excellencies, AGIA that we are discussing today will therefore focus on climate resilient infrastructure, including energy, transport, water and sanitation, health infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, urban and rural infrastructure. AGIA will mobilize $100 million in grants for project preparation, $400 million in blended financing through grants, concessional resources, and commercial investments for project development. This early stage capital is intended to help to unlock $10 billion in private investment in green infrastructure in Africa. Your Excellencies, we clearly need global partnerships to deliver on this agenda. AGIA is very well aligned with the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, with the Global Gateway Initiative, and with the Just Energy Transition Partnerships. And so as we gather today, we have three expectations for our gathering. First is to build political support of Your Excellency's heads of state and government for AGIA to support green infrastructure in your countries. The second is to build financing support. I know we have quite a lot of financiers and investors around here for AGIA. And third, to develop strategic partnerships for AGIA. This is a very powerful gathering. This gathering of Your Excellency's heads of state and governments and private sector leaders shows the power of public-private partnerships to make things work at scale. And that is what we are hoping to do with AGIA, because it's a truly transformative vehicle to deliver green infrastructure for Africa. And of course, we are doing it with only one purpose in mind, is to drive towards net zero emissions for Africa. So we're going to get started. I look forward to our engagements. Thank you very much for making time to be here, and welcome once again. So we're going to divide this into different portions. We're going to have our heads of state and government up here first. So let me ask His Excellency President Azali Assoumani, the President of the Republic of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union, to please take a seat in front. Welcome, Your Excellency. Oui, Excellence, prenez place, s'il vous plaît. Your Excellency, President Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana. Your Excellency, President Andre Rajoelina. Your President, Your Excellency, President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani. I think that's about just the... Sorry? Yeah, Prime Minister Achi, yeah. Your Excellency, Prime Minister Achi of Cote d'Ivoire. Your Excellencies, welcome to this interaction. We don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to, I'm just going to ask you questions directly. Please kindly speak to us from your heart so that we save a lot of time. This is not designed for speeches, so it's an interaction. We want to hear from your heart about what you think. And so let me start with you, Monsieur le Président Assoumani.
Mr. President Assoumani.
Monsieur le Président, le tarif d'électricité, par exemple,
the price of electricity in your country, in Comoros, you are currently working on it. What is your strategy to reduce costs while using renewables, and what would the AGIU side start to by congratulating you for everything you're doing for the African Union? You have the floor.
Merci, mon cher frère Adesina. Mais là, vous me gênez un peu. Je commence par les Comores, par
thank you very much. Should I start with Comoros or the African Union? Well, first of all, thank you very much for the organization of this panel. It's very important. We all realized that we were talking of infrastructure. We always talk about transport. But we forgot to talk about energy. We forgot to manage energy. Energy is managing us. We need to realize how important energy is, its management. How can we make sure it serves the people? Thank you ever so much for organizing this event, for building this alliance with the African Commissions, Africa 50 and other partners.
que j'ai à
So
participer.
I'm delighted to take part in this roundtable to contribute to see how we can push this alliance forward for a green alliance as a president of the African Union and the Comoros. Energy production, unfortunately, as you all know,
Pas des pays africains
in most African countries is still insufficient for
nos ambitions
to sustain our ambitions for our countries. The
au niveau de l'Union des Comores.
power of the
Des prévisions.
production represents 55% of what we need.
On le dit à toute honnêteté. On est franchement
So we're being blatantly honest. We are far from our ambitions or from the provisions we should have. However,
nous disposons
we
potentiel
have
appréciable en sources
a
d'énergie renouvelable.
good potential regarding renewables. We have started to do the work, whether it is solar that everyone knows, but we also have geothermal energy with great power. This
Le
would,
mettre en place
if we manage to put it in place, this would
aux besoins du pays.
help us meet the needs of the country. 50 to 50% for renewable. We have thermal, and as everyone knows, we need to move from thermal to renewable, but there is this transition period,
À cet objectif.
and so we need to be able to reach this goal for renewables.
Mon gouvernement travaille
Our government is working to on the energy sector.
avec bien sûr
We need to we have the help of the African Bank and other developing partners, governments, the necessary reforms for
je dis bien des promoteurs privés.
the involvement of private investors in the energy sector. The government has put in place a new code for electricity and renewables.
Surtout le secteur privé. Nous travaillons actuellement à la
We are currently working on the
Mon gouvernement
on
continuera
an agency for the energy regulations. My government will continue to put in place healthy policies that will build the right environment for private investment to thrive and to use the energy, the renewable needs. Africa is expecting a lot from these initiatives. I would like to take the opportunity of this roundtable to
à travers les ressources
tell our
concessionnaires
partners to bring with the resources that they have to commit to fulfill their commitments before during the COP28. And I'm also asking for the deployment of these strategies. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much, everyone.
Merci beaucoup, Excellence, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Your Excellence, and thank you for this support for before COP28. It's very important.
President Nana Akufo-Addo. I was in Ghana during the annual meetings of the African Development Bank that you hosted us so generously. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was going to the Pokwase Road interchange, which is tremendous. It's a 4-tier interchange. And I think it's the largest in West Africa and probably the second largest in Africa. So well done for all you're doing with regard to infrastructure.
We have to thank you.
So, Mr. President, I wanted to ask you, given your commitment and leadership on infrastructure, what are your plans to green the infrastructure space in Ghana? And in particular, I also know you are very passionate about the issue of providing clean cooking energy for your population, in particular the women. Can you share with us your perspectives on these issues?
Thank you very much indeed. And Pokwase, I think we have to name one of the levels after you because of your assistance in getting us there. Ghana, like virtually all of Africa, the majority of households, rural as well as urban, are heated with wood fuels. And wood fuels, apart from the emissions that they They bring about 78% of Ghana's emissions. Black carbons are derived from the use of wood fuels. Obviously, also automatically produce a lot of pressure on our forests. So we recognize that it is absolutely essential for the future that we shift from wood fuels to clean energy. And therefore, the nationally determined contributions of the country have been engineered around this shift that has to take place in the years ahead of us. And what does it mean? It means this, that first of all, the decision to scale up access and adoption of improved biomass stoves by some 3 million households in 2030. We want to also scale up the adoption of liquefied petroleum gas use from 25% to 50% nationwide by 2030. And then promote more innovative and efficient kiln use. So with the adoption of brick kilns for charcoal production, the projected black carbon emissions for 2040 is expected to reduce by an average of 29%. So far in the last 24 months, the government has distributed 340,000 improved coke stoves. And by the end of 2018, a total of 1.2 million improved coke stoves have already been disseminated to home, an additional 1,000 institutional stoves. We have also increased LPG coverage in Ghana by 35%. And these are some of the critical measures that we have taken and are taking to reduce the dependence on wood fuels. It is absolutely essential for us to do so. The amount of money involved in this transition is a lot. We're talking about the projections that we have made of some nearly $700 million to make this transition feasible. The Alliance for Green Infrastructure has indicated that it wants to help. I don't know how much of this money are going to be available from the Alliance, but that is the totality of the global needs of the country in this area. It is something that we just cannot avoid implementing, and it is extremely important for the future of our country that we find the money to do so. So, Mr. President, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel and for the opportunity to bring one of our major preoccupations to the attention of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's something that we cannot avoid. It's something we must have the money for. And the $700 million, certainly it's within the envelope of what we hope we're going to mobilize of $10 billion. And so that attention to clean cooking is it's very important. I'm sure it's also going to be very important for other presidents that are going to be speaking. Monsieur le Président Rajoelina.
Mr. President Rajoelina,
Vous venez d'être, vous avez reçu le prix de Babacar Ndiaye.
got the Babacar Ndiaye Prize for your leadership on infrastructure. Congratulations.
Dans votre pays aussi, j'ai vu
I know that I see what you've done in your country with hydraulic energy. Mr. President, as a island, a country, what how are things in Madagascar regarding this situation on energy?
Tout d'abord, Monsieur le Président, je tiens à vous remercier.
First of all, Honourable President, I'd like to thank you for this invitation at this roundtable. As you know, when we
De l'énergie verte ou l'infrastructure
talk about greener energy and infrastructure, it's something that is very important to me.
que pays insulaire,
As an insular country, unlike just like the other countries of the Indian Ocean, Madagascar is facing several challenges. Climate changes. When we talk about climate events and climate changes, we're talking about droughts, floods, and cyclones. In Madagascar, just for 2022, we have seen 4 consecutive cyclones. They are more and more frequent and more violent. This makes things much more complicated for a insular state. The cost of managing these climate risks represents 1% of our GDP. This is huge, Mr. Honourable President. When we talk about climate change and the challenges we face on open infrastructures, we're talking about energy, deforestation, reforestation. For energy, Madagascar currently uses fossil fuels. This increases the cost of productions in Madagascar, but for climate change, President Namanda Akua-Addo talked about the use of coal to cook meals. And in Madagascar, like many countries in Africa, we still use coal. And each household, you need to destroy 1 hectare forest each year to cook food. So we need financing for alternate sources of energy. And in Madagascar, to come back to energy, God gave us the wind, the sun, water, and we can use these resources and transform them into energy. But what happens in Madagascar, but also in other countries on the African continent, the long-awaited development isn't there. And when we lack energy, we can't develop a country. So that is why we have launched this challenge. You've talked about how hydroelectric projects. We've signed a contract with Saouf, and also this will represent 50% of the energy production in Madagascar. This will decrease the cost because, as you know, the energy cost in Madagascar today represents 20 cents for a kilowatt hour, between 12 to 10 in developed countries, just like here in Paris or other places in Europe. So we have the population has less revenue and they pay their energy more, and this is why I am calling Madagascar is supporting the AGA on these green energy sources, and we need to put in place a governance of adapted mechanism for each country. I'm giving a call to the international community. There were commitments that haven't been respected on the $100 billion commitments from the polluting countries for the green bond. We are wondering how many were used, and a country like Madagascar, we have put in place our national adaptation plan. In Madagascar is one of the first countries in Africa having confirmed its national plan to fight climate change, but we don't have the financing yet. So we need an international commitment, and above all, the summits and the meetings lead to action. That is what I am calling for today, and thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour ça.
Thank you very much, Honourable President, for the results you've had for your commitment today. I would like to ask His Excellency, Honourable President Gazaouni. The bank supports your country, Mauritania,
hydrogen vet.
in the hopes of optimizing green hydrogen. We have an alliance for green hydrogen in Africa, and I am told that you are getting $78 billion together for this investment into green hydrogen. So the question I had for you is the following. How is Mauritania exploring these different green hydrogen projects? Are you hoping to make green steel by transforming your mineral locally? And with this green hydrogen, what role do you see for the alliance like AJ? Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to congratulate everyone for your leadership for a green economy. Your initiative today of organizing this meeting once again shows your commitment to this cause, and that is very important for all of us. I would like to thank the Islamic Development Bank, the European Commission, Africa 50, and all the other partners in this alliance, the Alliance for a Green Infrastructure in Africa. I would also like to thank my colleagues, heads of states, that seeing the key importance of this topic made it here today to have these debates. As you know, the energy transition is not only a condition for the sustainability of the development, but is also a requirement for the survival of our planet.
Mauritania his greenhouse gases emissions are marginal. He's fully committed in favor of energy transition.
L'exploitation de son potentiel d'énergie renouvelable, notamment.
We are harnessing the full potential of our renewable energies, including wind and solar energies.
La part des énergies renouvelables dans notre
We've increased the share of renewable energies, going up from 18% in 2015 to 34% in 2020, with a target of reaching 50% by 2050. Furthermore, using this huge potential in renewable energies, be it wind and solar energy, we are projecting producing 4,000 gigawatts of green energy, and we are turning to green hydrogen as well. Green hydrogen has the biggest potential today to ensure a good energy transition and to strengthen our growth, creating decent jobs and fighting against poverty. Developing green hydrogen will put our country on the proper industrialization pathway by changing our local economies, using all resources,
and
to turn our iron resources into green steel, and making sure that we can produce an affordable green energy. Mauritania aims at producing green hydrogen at a good cost. However, Mauritania, just like other African countries, is faced with huge funding obstacles. Funding infrastructures, be it road, electrical, energy infrastructures, we need more funds in order to fully realize the potential in green hydrogen. And that is where our Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa can play a key role. We are expecting and asking AIDGIA to fully contribute to our green infrastructures, to produce green hydrogen and to strengthen our capacities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much,
Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Mr. President, and we'll stand by your side. Mr. Prime Minister Patrick Achi, as you all know, the opening session on the Alliance for a Green Hydrogen has happened in Abidjan. And every time we meet, we talk about infrastructures, and you're making great headways, so congratulations. I have one question for you, Prime Minister. In the past decade, your country has changed, especially when it comes to infrastructure. Do you want to keep working on that by investing on sustainable transport and more specifically on electrical buses? Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to congratulate the Africa 50 group for having, and thank them for having invited us to this event. Indeed, most cities in our continent are faced with rapid urbanization and globalization. For Abidjan, we have now in the span of 20 years, we went from 600,000 inhabitants to 6 million inhabitants. And of course, this has an impact on our public transport system. We have to help these people travel. And if you want to only use the road infrastructures, of course, you are quickly constrained. Indeed, the urbanization is going so fast that the ability to build new roads is not always enough. We don't have enough vehicles, and therefore you have to use mass transportation means to help these people travel. And that is why we turn to the BRP that we initiated within the framework of our Sustainable City initiative. And of course, we are looking at PPPs and trying to transport 300,000 people per day on our line. And we have investments on the French part. We are working with the AFD to build a 35-kilometer long subway line crossing the city of Abidjan from east to west. And in the past, we only had traditional vehicle, and because only traditional vehicle run, we had a level of pollution in the city that was unacceptable, and therefore we've decided to ban all vehicles that were older than 5 years of age. And these measures have been hard when we took them, but they have led to very tangible results. So our BRP project costed $2.5 billion and should help improve the transportation system in the city of Abidjan, should help us cope with the growth of the city, and would also lead to more GDP. Indeed, the possibility to help people moving from one point to another in these huge cities has an impact on our GDP, national GDP. So this is, of course, fully aligned with our Sustainable City Initiative by 2030. And then we have a second phase of our BRT. We are going to increase our subway system as well. And I think that the pathway for the future has to be mass transportation. Today, we have about 400,000 people traveling through our public transportation system per day, and that is not enough at the moment. But of course, this raises the question of electrification, because what we don't do downstream, well, has an impact upstream. We have to be clear-eyed there. This morning, President Macron said that we have to look at the different possibilities and models, taking into account the specificities of the countries. Dogmas can sometimes prevent the country from acting, because if you are just using some models without taking into account the specificities of your country, you might not be able to act. And I think President Bazoum said that we have to go step by step, moving from private vehicles to BRTs and subways. So that's the first step. But then, of course, our energy strategy has another objective, having a 45% fossil fuels in our energy mix by 2050. So we're really working so that our public transportation system becomes more green.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Just to bring this panel to a close, I want to just ask you 1 minute. What will your advice to Algeria as Algeria takes off? Just what is that issue that you want us to address in Algeria in 1 minute? Let me start with you, President Rajoelina.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le message que je voudrais
Thank you,
passer,
Mr. President. My message today is that we have to massively invest in green energy to protect the environment.
nous avons besoin d'accélérer le financement,
We need to step up
agir ensemble.
fundings and work together.
Comme vous le savez,
To do so, as you all know, Madagascar is a big country full of potential, and as I was saying earlier, we need to harness natural resources. That is why out of our 119 districts in the country, we're going to implement 47. We are going to make sure that 47 of those districts have solar farms on their soil. So that's a great challenge. By the end of the year, that's a great challenge for my country. But we can't make sure that we have green growth in Africa without having access to energy, roads, education and health. EGIA is really at the heart of these continental issues, and therefore should be a means to step up access to finance, promoting blended finance solutions and giving the priority to island and vulnerable states, and also states on the African continent. They should be given the priority. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Merci beaucoup. Le Président Assoumani, la même question.
President Assoumani, the same question goes for you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais être bref parce que
Thank you, President. I'll be brief because my brother and neighbor is here, and he'll be probably speaking about geothermal energy. In Comoros, we have a lot of potential, however, with a lack of expertise and money. But luckily for us, Kenya is here for us, so you're the one who are going to fund our work, right? I think that as soon as we get access to money, we'll move forward. But what the President said is serious. Madagascar and Comoros are an hour away. Madagascar is a country with a huge potential, and as he just said, They have a lot of droughts, and therefore they find themselves in
Comme on l'a dit,
facing shortages,
on industrialise l'Afrique. C'est-à-dire on passe à
and we know
des potentialités à même.
that there are some industrialization processes in Africa,
Là, non seulement Madagascar, mais tous les pays de la région peuvent
and
être autonomes.
we know that all the countries in the region have to work on that to become more autonomous. But that raises the question of energy. Do we want to turn to renewable energies, or do we want to still use fossil fuels? Well, that's the question, but we have to work on that transition to make sure that once we start this transition, we keep moving forward. I think island countries need to be protected. They are in a very vulnerable state due to sea rising levels, but they also have a lot of potential. We have to develop those so that they can become self-sufficient and also be contribute fully to the free trade area in Africa. That would help making sure that industrialization happens everywhere where we have resources in Africa, where self-sufficiency can be achieved, and therefore tomorrow will be a great market and we'll be able to consume our products before importing finished products. But all of that requires us to work on electricity. So thank you very much for your support, and we want to make sure that the pledges are then followed by actions. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. President Akufo-Addo.
Thank you. President Akufo-Addo.
Thank you very much for bringing us together to discuss this very important subject. I think the thing that is obvious is that we are in a race against time. The whole climate crisis is now on us in a way whereby we cannot any longer dither with the solutions that have to be taken. So the request that I would make of the Alliance for Green Infrastructure is that when projects are sent to you for your support, that these projects are dealt with expeditiously. It's been one of the major issues confronting each of our countries in dealing with the multilateral development institutions, the time which it takes for projects to be approved, not approved, to be dealt with. And for me, that would be the major appeal that I would make to you, is that in this area where there is a need for us to act with speed, we no longer have the luxury of time as an ally, that the matters that are brought to your attention are dealt with expeditiously. Thank you very much once again for your assistance in bringing us together.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and we will do everything we can to fast-track things. Let me ask President of Mauritania your perspectives in closing.
Oui, merci encore, Président Adesina.
Thank you very much, President Adesina.
La pertinence de toutes les interventions que je viens d'entendre.
I'd like to commend the relevance of all previous contributions.
Ma conviction quant à la capacité de l'Alliance.
I have faith in the alliance, and I'm sure that
L'infrastructure verte en Afrique
EGIA will be able to be a very efficient contributor to energy transition in Africa.
en appel
And
partenaires potentiels afin
I
d'adhérer à
call for all of our potential partners to join our alliance and support us. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, je
Prime
pense que
Minister, thank you, Mr. President. I think this last question
explication de la raison pour laquelle
forces us to look at the reasons why you wanted to organize this session as we're gathered here today during the summit for a new global financial pact.
le financement a été
In the past 50 years, we've used one model of funding and investment, and we've realized that we have not yet reached our objectives.
comme on le disait encore ce matin,
What does that mean? As we just said this morning, a fourth of all resources are to be found at the public level and a third at the private level. So we need to look for transformational decisions to try and solve the issues in the various organizations and look to the private sectors to look at the possible solutions that we can implement to really use the full potential of the private sector. You were talking about a PPP earlier on, and I think that with your resources you can clearly see
de besoins qu'il y avait, que vous ne pourrez jamais à vous seul financer tous ces projets.
that you will never be able to fund all the projects that you need to implement because they cost over 100 billion euros. So I think that what we need is to really support project preparation. We also need to look at resource mobilization and turn to the private sector to ask them to provide us with leverage and guarantees. If we use those solutions, then we will be able to
De façon plus ambitieuse,
be more ambitious, to really meet our needs, and we'll be able to move faster. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Please put your hands together for Your Excellencies for a very dynamic presentation. Thank you, Mr. President. Please, you may have your seat. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please do not leave the room. It's not finished. This was our first panel. We have a second panel with heads of state coming up immediately after the pictures. Thank you. Nous avons un deuxième panel de chefs d'État. Merci de rester assis. Ce n'est pas encore fini. Merci.
Let me call to the podium President of Kenya, President Ruto. Please join us on the podium. Okay. The Prime Minister of DRC, please. Mr. Prime Minister, please come up. State Secretary of Germany, Cookies. I think I see you here. Assistant Secretary of U.S. Treasury. I thought I saw Alexia. She's probably stepped out. Huh? Is she coming? Alexia? Mark Malloch-Brown. And who else you said? I think we're fine. Yes, yeah, no, I'm going to do that. Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Please have your seats so we can continue this continuation of our conversation. Emmanuel Moulin, you're here, and you're going to speak from there, so we're going to come back to you. Mr. President, President Ruto, you've done so much on renewable energy. You have 90% of your energy mix in Kenya that is from renewable energy, which is fantastic. And you are hosting the climate summit, the Africa Climate Summit. Can you explain to us what your goals are and what you hope to achieve during this climate summit, and how can AGIA be helpful?
Thank you very much, Adesina, and let me also thank you, because part of our journey towards renewable energy, we've had a great partnership with Africa Development Bank, especially in the distribution network. You remember 8 years ago, Kenya was at 30% connectivity. Today we are at 77% connectivity, courtesy of support from your good bank. But let me say 3 things. Number one, Africa only receives 3% of resources to energy, only 3%. And the last 5 years, it's come down by 40%. It is the reason why 600 million Africans have no access to electricity, and 900 million Africans have no access to clean cooking, simply because we do not have the requisite scalable investment to undo the problem. It is the reason why we are having the climate summit in Nairobi, to sort out 2 things. We need a candid conversation around climate change on 2 aspects. Listening to my colleagues who spoke here earlier, all of us have limited resources limited resources for us to deploy the kind of development that would take our countries to the levels we want. We have limited resources because the current financial infrastructure, international financial infrastructure, is such that Africa is attached with too much risk. Guterres said this morning, the UN Secretary said this morning, that some continents get as much as 8 times more expensive money. He was actually talking about Africa. We pay 8 times more than others. And that is why we are all discussing about how limited resources we have to deploy our development. That is a conversation we must have. I am hopeful that that conversation will begin in this summit. That in this summit, we will have a candid conversation about reform, yes, of the international financial institutions, the multilateral development banks, yes. About transformation of the multilateral institutions, yes. But the minimum we must leave this conference with, hopefully, from where I sit, is an agreement, at least so that we can get emergency liquidity, we can get debt restructuring, and we can get additional resources. The same way the SDRs were created, 600 billion shillings of SDR were created. It is possible, as Guterres was saying this morning, it's possible for us as a globe to create $500 billion every year to plug the gap that currently exists, especially for developing countries. That is the conversation that we want to have. And I am hopeful that before we leave here at the dinner, we will have agreed that we don't have to go and do the many things, the assessments, the bureaucracy, and the rest of it. That we can live here and say, for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, let us get our debt repayment from Kenya and from all of us here. Let us get our debt repayment to be converted into a long-term facility, 50-year facility with 10 years or 20 years grace period, so that from next year, the money that we would pay for debt repayment is available to do what we are doing. to run, to provide food, to provide health, to provide energy for all the infrastructure we are looking for. I hope that, and that is not difficult. It's not difficult to agree because it is already money that has been processed. We are already paying the debt. We have already been assessed. You don't need to do any more assessment. You don't need to get any more approval. All we need to do is to say, let us get this money that, for example, let me give you an example of Kenya. We're supposed to pay $5 billion every year to service debt. We're saying, if we can be allowed to use that $5 billion every year to deploy electricity or to do the next thing, Kenya would change. And we are not saying we don't want to pay that money. We are saying, let us pay it in 10 years. And let us pay it for 50 years. I mean, it's not difficult. I mean, it's as simple as that. So it's win-win. Nobody loses. We're not trying away from our debt. We will pay. We're not asking the lenders that we don't want to pay their money. We will pay. All we are saying is let's give ourselves a little bit of space because things are difficult. We have war in Europe. We have the pandemic, and we have all the challenges that we have. That's number one. I hope good people, we go away here with that agreement. Mm-hmm. Lastly. I mean, it's just pretty simple. Lastly, I hope that, and it is the conversation that I would really encourage us to come and conclude in Nairobi. Secondly, we need to deal with the subject of climate financing. We have huge challenges in the Sahel. We have major challenges, floods, landslides. Look at what happened in DRC, my brother is here. What happened in Rwanda? What happened in Malawi? 1,000 people died out of floods. What happened in Mozambique? Our region, the Horn of Africa, we lost as Kenya 2.5 million heads of livestock because of drought. In the same corner, you have drought in one corner, you have floods in another, you have landslides in another. Climate change is an existential threat, not to us alone, but to the globe as well. So I hope at the Sina that we will live here with an agreement on climate financing, because the kind of money, the scale of the money we need to deal with the challenge of climate financing is major. IEA, International Energy Agency, tells us we need $9.2 trillion every year to get our emissions to 45% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. We can raise those resources. And this time round, Adesina, we do not want to come to the table as victims from Africa. We are not victims. Yes, we have contributed less to the challenge of climate change, but we do not want to have that conversation. I don't think even we want to have a conversation about loss and damage. Let us have a different conversation. Let us not have a conversation about us versus them, North versus South. Let us have a conversation of win-win. Let us agree. Already the IMF have put it on the table. Let us agree on a carbon emissions tax where everybody pays. The emitters pay.
I know you will continue this in Nairobi.
No, just wait 1 minute. So I will not get another chance like this. So let's agree on that. Or let's agree on aviation tax. Let's agree on maritime tax. Let's agree on financial transaction tax. It's already been proposed. Let's agree. And we do not want others to pay. We want to pay all of us. But this time around, unlike before, we want to agree how it is used. We want to agree on the governance structure. When the World Bank and the IMF were created, we were not there. We were not countries. This time around, we are countries. We want to have a say. We do not want a situation where shareholders have a say on how much money we get, the same they did with the SDRs. Good man. So hopefully, at the Sina, if we can leave this conference with those two, having agreed on climate financing and having agreed on what to do with the debt situation in our continent, we can sort out this energy issue. This man here, Andrew, is putting in money in our geothermal facility. We are spending close to $400 million every year to import fertilizer. He has decided that he's going to use our geothermal resources through hydrogen technology to create the fertilizer for us so that we don't have to import fertilizer from Russia and Ukraine and the rest of the places. So that's really the future.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Adesina. I know I have said more than I should, but I really wish you well. You're doing a wonderful job and you have our support.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I know you have to go soon, but you've animated us to be in Nairobi for the summit. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me come to you, Prime Minister, Monsieur le Premier Ministre de RDC.
Mr. Prime Minister of RDC, Honorable Prime Minister, when I get to your country, usually we talk of Enga. There's a lot to do for Enga. Mr. Prime Minister, where are the projects for Enga 3 and how could the Alliance help you to accelerate its implementation?
Oui, merci beaucoup, Président.
Thank you very much, President Adesina, for this opportunity that we have to in this summit on this new Global Finance Pact. I would like to thank the President Emmanuel Macron and all the partners that made this meeting possible.
Encore une fois de plus,
once again, it's a demonstration of our will to change things, and when we have this will, it will lead to results. Inga 3, it's energy, hydroelectric energy, which would allow us to have a coverage not only in RDC, but beyond that, other countries on the African continent.
Avant d'arriver même à la réponse,
before getting to the answer, I would just, to add on what President Ruto just said, indeed, the RDC, just like other countries of the Congo Basin,
réclame toujours des compensations.
We always are requesting for compensations on climate in our capacity to absorb CO2. We want these carbon credits, and they are not coming, especially at the price which we want them to be.
Nos populations, elles sont
Our populations are waiting for this because we need to preserve our forests.
Sur le charbon de bois,
we need to stay away from coal.
Garantir que nous
we need charcoal. We need to make sure we don't have. We need to help our populations, and this is when we can give them an alternative. This alternative is energy that will allow them to avoid charcoal altogether.
Nous avons encore des difficultés.
Since we are still having issues on the carbon credits, this is we have another alternative. The AGIA wants to make prepare a common project with African countries. They need to be bankable, and we need to help them with the risk, making sure it is low, and then financing. If we struggle with carbon credit, we need a win-win financing that would allow us to develop this Inga barrage, because we're not talking only about hydroelectric energy today, but also hydrogen. And there are other partners here. We talked of a partner, Mr. Andrew, that works in this, and we want to have next to you, to the structure that you are putting in place. We want to have more investments. Inga is a great integrating project, a great demand for 13 billion, a first phase that could ask for 7 billion, and we need private investors to help us to have alternatives regarding for explicitly. For energy means water, energy is industry and agriculture, local transformation for the improvement of the value chains, as we play our role of a solutions country with the minerals needed for the energy transitions, for the building of batteries. We have great expectation on this, and we'll hope that you'll be with us to fulfill, meet these goals.
Let me come to you, State Secretary George Cookies. Germany launched the new Africa strategy in January 2023. And one of BMZ's objectives is to drive forward just energy transition within that particular framework. Question, can you tell us a little bit about this strategy very quickly and how specifically IGEA can help in its implementation in some of the countries that you're looking at?
Yes, many thanks. And one of the key things is that we have a great interest in cooperating with many African countries and organizations active here on implementing the ideas that have been pronounced here. For example, we committed to 2 billion into the Green Climate Fund. We are paying our share towards the goal of 100 billion international climate finance to make sure that the financing is available. Exactly as President Ruto said earlier, we need to think big and we have to think billions, if not trillions, on these projects. So the industrial scale, large expansion of renewable projects, I think, is very realistic. We've shown it in many cases, both in our countries and in Europe and in Africa and in other parts of the world. So now we have to get into the industrialization. And the Just Energy Transition Partnerships are exactly the instrument to implement that. With South Africa, we've agreed on an 8.5 billion project and package of decarbonizing the South African economy, putting a lot of billions into the renewable project, and of course at the same time making sure that the transition happens in a just and equitable way to take those affected by the structural changes of this transition with us and supporting them. A further aspect of our strategy is the Climate Club, where we want to have partnerships and make sure that we cooperate. And the third pillar of the Climate Club is exactly the cooperation with countries, for example, in Africa, to implement this basic idea of the partnership towards energy transition and assuring both aspects. First of all, the equity of it, and second of all, the industrial scale. We are very, very big consumers in the future of hydrogen. We will not be able to produce even remotely all of it ourselves. Estimates are that the German economy will move from being a big consumer of natural gas to be a big consumer of green hydrogen. We will need billions of kilograms of it. So in that sense, we are reliable and very sizable buyers. So a lot of the projects that are underway can also count on us as reliable off-takers to make projects bankable. The final point that I would like to make is our complete integration in the European concept of the Global Gateway, which is 300 billion of financing for infrastructure projects. 150 billion of those are dedicated to Africa. So many of the great projects that the Prime Minister has mentioned can be financed with the help of this project.
Well, thank you very much. I think if you have $150 billion dedicated to Africa and $10 billion for IGEA, we're done. So that would be fantastic. Thank you. Let me come to you, Assistant Secretary, U.S. Treasury, Alexia. Can you tell us a little bit what the status is on this fantastic program, which is the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, and how IGEA could help towards accelerating the deployment of those resources, just like he just said for Germany?
Thank you so much, President Adesina. And before I answer your question at the outset, I have to say that the U.S. fully supports IGEA. And why? It goes straight at the heart of a major challenge, but a challenge that could be an opportunity if we do the right things. And that's mobilizing concessional finance for early stage project preparation to build the pipeline of bankable and, yes, climate aligned projects, right? So that's the purpose. And we've been talking about two realities that are facing us. Number one, that, and President Ruto spoke about this very eloquently, unfortunately, which is that, that Africa faces and is exposed to climate change in particularly harsh ways, right? The loss of life, of livestock, agricultural land. Second reality, and you said it, President Adesina, there is so much infrastructure yet to be built. So the only conclusion, as you said, President Adesina, is that we need to build green or green existing infrastructure. And to do that, public money will not be enough. But the harsh reality is that private investment in infrastructure in Africa has actually been declining. So I hope that this panel and what AGIA is trying to do will help start to reverse this disturbing trend. Now, there's another conundrum. The landscape is full of project preparation facilities, and yet we don't actually have sufficient well-functioning project preparation facilities. And so that's where I have high expectations of AGIA to come in with the right expertise, and here I have to sort of congratulate the special envoy who has the mix of policy, technical, and private sector skills to lead AGIA. The expertise and the partners of AGIA, I look at Alain here of Africa 50, leading on the knowledge of the entire African Development Bank to really play differently in this field. And also, I have expectations, President Adesina, that AGIA can perhaps help play a coordination role across different project preparation facilities on the continent so that the financial and human resources that do exist can be leveraged more efficiently and effectively. Also, I think the standards that AGIA will use hopefully will be of the highest quality, leveraging the quality infrastructure investment standards, for example, or Blue Dot. And of course, making sure that all infrastructure is built in a way to be resilient so that it can provide value not only to the governments that are helping to finance them, but of course to the end users, to the everyday women and men who will benefit from the infrastructure. So I just wanted to sort of set up my expectations of AGIA if I could. And then turning more specifically to your question around PGII, and you mentioned, Jorg, the Global Gateway, and that's the sort of G7 $600 billion over 5 years commitment to help build resilience infrastructure around the world. And let me just give you two examples linked to Africa. One is work that's happening in terms of investments in the Lobito corridor, so early stage investments in rail that will help create connectivity, DRC, Zambia through Angola. So that's really powerful. And then the other example is helping to build digital infrastructure, which I think is critical for the future of Africa. And that ranges from big data centers to last mile connectivity issues as well. The U.S. is also trying to support project preparation through our fiscal, the President Biden's fiscal 24 budget, where we've put in some money to support the Global Infrastructure Facility at the World Bank, that I hope will also be a partner for AGIA as well. And so just to say that, again, we think you're touching on exactly one of the obstacles that exists today. When we talk to investors, they are interested in coming to Africa, and frankly, well-structured projects do get financed. They do get financed. The problem is there's a dearth of projects, and you are going to be a big part of the solution. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexia. Thank you. Thank you. And I think on your point, we also look into models that can aggregate project preparation and also deployment of risk-sharing facilities at scale. So thank you for that wonderful support. Let me come to you, Mark. I know that as president of the Open Society Foundations, you care quite a lot about climate justice, and that's one of the things that you folks do. And I understand you also have transformative projects that are looking into the global south and how to do many things with regard to climate change. So can you tell us a little bit about this work, and in particular, what entities like AGIA can do in partnership with you?
Well, as someone with a development background, I suppose for me, it's not far jump to say that justice ultimately means growth and jobs and the greening of economies. And so for me, this is a natural place for open society to be, and we're very heavily in across Africa. But when I look at the energy scene in Africa and the investment scene, what is missing versus other areas is the role of capital. If you look in other parts of the world, capital is ahead of public policy in terms of driving the green transition. When you look over your shoulder in Africa, the capital isn't there. and I'm sure, as Alexia says, in large part because the projects are just not quality and teed up. And so we're really excited by AGEA, and like Alexia, hugely impressed by Amadou Hutt's leadership of it, and your leadership, Mr. President. And so, you know, as we look at the very different energy profiles of different parts of the continent, a fossil fuel, oil and gas dependent West Africa, heavily renewables penetrated East Africa, heavy reliance still on coal in parts of southern Africa, we know there isn't a sort of one-size-fits-all of the kind that squeezes everybody into the same public policy formation. But there is the opportunity for each region and country to find its own journey of transition with the right projects which green its energy production and its jobs and its economy more widely as rapidly and sensibly as possible. And we will be very happy as OSF to find ways to support AGEA in the sort of, if you like, non-investment sides of it, the project preparation, the deployment of advisors, the looking at, you know, are there ways to sort of mitigate some of the risk and bring the cost of capital down to something like the European cost, where renewables already, you know, are a very profitable line of business for those who invest in them. So, you know, we're there as an enthusiastic partner beside you all as you move forward in this. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Before we close up, let me give the last word on this panel to the Honorable Commissioner for the AUC, Dr. Amani Abuzaid. Thank you for your partnership in working with us in the development of AGEA, and as the Commissioner responsible for infrastructure, what are your thoughts about PIDA and how can AGEA help?
Thank you very much, Honourable President, for giving me the floor. I work in partnership with you, but I am you. We are one team, not only because I was part of the Abbott family, but because we are one team. I believe that everything was said, but it is the PDAC, so the Infrastructure Development Program, but maybe something that wasn't talked about, it's the regional and transcontinental dimension to it. Climate doesn't stop at the borders of our countries, so we need a regional, a transcontinental approach for energy issues is key to this problem, and this is where the role of the African Union comes into play. We built our projects in a perspective of African integration, but once again, all of our goals, as you will see, positively contribute in a way or another to the debate on climate, whether it is poverty reductions, CO2 emissions reductions, etc. So this is the first point. The PIDA projects were selected, as you know, Honourable President, and as many of these this audience knows, as they took part in this process. We took into account resilience, climate resilience criteria, gender, smart technology criteria, and also urban integration, rural, urban criteria, etc., etc. So a very minute examination was done. So that was the second point. Thirdly, whether it is the AGEA or the KIDA, we are now reaching the financing point, and we are here in Paris to talk about financing. And so there is blending for some projects, but as long as the game stays the same, we won't make it. As they say in English, there's the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is this the rating of our countries, the way the way that our countries are shown as risky, and via 4 agencies that have only one office in Jogo, and there is only, I think, one person. So 4 people, more or less, are managing us, all of us here, and our international financial systems. This cannot keep going.
The game has to change. Ça, c'est le seul moyen de le faire. Et nous sommes
This is the only way of doing this, and that's what we're here for, not to say once again, you need to integrate the private sector or getting funding or once again promise us progress, but the way our systems work has to change and needs to change, starting with the rating. Fourth point I wanted to talk about, it was touched upon by His Excellency the Prime Minister of the Côte d'Ivoire. Climate is not only energy. I understand that for Europe it is urgent. It was for us since the independence up until today, but there's more to that. We need to think transport, and for us in Africa, transport, public transport, urban transport and rail transport, these are green infrastructures. We need to keep in mind that 21% of the energy that's used in Africa goes to transport. So we need to make sure that roads free up our cities to reduce pollution, and will even will contribute even more on the climate, and I can go on digitalizations, etc. Honourable President, we need to have a clear approach. We are not high-risk countries. Studies have shown for infrastructures we are the second region with the least risk for infrastructures after the Arab countries. We are the most profitable when we talk about infrastructure investments. We have bankable projects, and we need to stop altogether telling us we don't have bankable projects, because that's not getting us anywhere. We need to fight these stereotypes and rethink the whole financial systems, especially for our countries and our projects, without forgetting, and we'd like to insist on regional and transcontinental projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I know we have Moulin needs to leave and Duarte. So before we get down from the panel, I wanted to, Monsieur le Directeur Général Moulin, la transition énergétique.
Honourable President, the energy transition is at the heart of the cooperation between France and African countries. Why is an initiative such as AGI, why is it important?
Merci, Président.
Thank you very much. Oh no, I have to go on stage. Thank you very much, Honourable President. Very briefly, a couple of words to share the great optimism we have regarding this initiative, because it is at the crossroads of three main points of this summit. First of all, the fight for development, fight against poverty. We can't have development without infrastructure. Decarbonation, fighting against climate change, because we won't be able to fight climate change without sustainable infrastructure, and the involvement of the private sector. For us, it's an important initiative. As you said, Honourable President, France works a lot with many different African countries on green infrastructure. We mentioned the Abidjan Metro. There also is the regional express in Dakar, the green infrastructure in Africa regarding energy production. We are also working with several platforms, the Source platform, a digital platform for project preparation. We are also supporting Fast Infra, which is another platform. The goal is to label projects and their sustainability, for the private sector to finance them. And I would wanted to say that for us, the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa allows us to look at the to have a holistic view of the projects. And with the goals of this alliance, we are delighted to support and to announce today our support for the alliance, and we are at your disposal to define together with Proba, who I believe is here. There she is. So she's a division of the French Agency for Development in charge of private sector. So I'm looking forward to talking about this with you. Thank you very much.
The next panel. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your contributions. Let me call up Madame Duarte to come on the panel. Alain Ebobuse, the CEO of Africa 50. Ambrose Payole, I saw him, I'm not sure. Is il est parti. Okay, Mark Galogui, Serge Ekwe, and Sidi Tar. Hey man, how are you? Good to see you. Good. Thank you. So, Alain, let me first and foremost thank you very much for your leadership on putting all of this together. I remember when you came to see me in Abidjan, and I told you we had to do this. You said, Mr. President, you're going to keep a chairman, you're going to keep me so busy. And you were busy and you put it together. Tell us, what's your perspective? How are you going to move this now to preparing the projects? You're a great organization, Africa 50, in preparing projects. How are we going to mobilize the resources and also reach financial close on some of the critical green infrastructure for Africa?
Well, thank you, Chairman Adesina, President Adesina, for giving us the floor. Indeed, when we spoke, it was your vision to try to come up with an initiative which is bold and trying to make a difference in the infrastructure space. We decided together with our partners, the African Union Commission, African Development Bank, and Africa 50, to focus on project preparation and project development because we felt that this is where the biggest needs were, and then we needed to scale up substantially project preparation and project development. So what Asia is doing really is some of the things that we are already doing, but trying to do it at scale with speed, and also to introduce a commercial mindset in the way we're actually developing projects. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for thinking about Asia. Thank you for the partners, African Development Bank, African Union Commission, Africa 50. But more importantly, thank you for the new partners that are joining Asia. Some of them are in this, on this panel, but we want to bring as many partners as possible, and more importantly, work again with the private sectors, private developers, to develop projects and make sure that we can achieve those $10 billion of capital mobilization that Asia has a goal. Now, Asia is going to be a result-oriented, commercially minded facility or fund. This is what we are doing. This is going to be the difference, and we will do it at scale with speed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to finish on that.
Thank you very much. Excellent, as always, Alain. Let me come to you, Mafalda Duarte. First, congratulations on your appointment as the Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund. We're really delighted. You've been at the forefront of global climate finance for quite a long time. What are your priorities for Africa quickly, and how do you see AGIA fit into that agenda?
Thank you very much, President Adesina, and congratulations to you and to African Development Bank, my previous home, for really being champions of this agenda in Africa. And I would like to say that in case it's not of general understanding, with the concessional finance, with climate finance, African leaders have actually made important decisions that are counterintuitive to many, and they've been making them for quite some time. Because if we remember, we heard President of Kenya just speak earlier on. Kenya has been investing in geothermal power development for some time, and concessional finance has played quite a critical role to de-risk those investments. If we think of countries like Morocco and others, that many years ago, more than 10 years ago, they decided to invest in solar big time, at a big scale. And these are technologies that had quite significantly higher costs. So to bring the cost of those investments down, concessional finance played a critical role. So with the means, what I'm trying to say is that with the means and with the right type of finance, African leaders have actually been at the forefront and making tough investment decisions. And this is, I have been having the privilege of leading the climate investment funds. Now I'll take the role of leading the Green Climate Fund. We have seen the power of this finance, as I said earlier on in a panel as well, in bringing these costs of capital, in de-risking investments, in facilitating the development of a pipeline of projects as well. So AGIA, we look forward very much to finding the ways of the Green Climate Fund working with AGIA as well, because as President Adesina has mentioned earlier on, the infrastructure gap in Africa is very large. We need to invest at the forefront of the infrastructure, so in clean energy and resilient, clean investments, clean infrastructure, resilient infrastructure. And I think there's a potential to further maximize climate finance. Of course, President of Kenya also mentioned there's a need to scale up ambition in terms of climate finance. And I'm glad to see that in this summit there will be conversations on revenue generating mechanisms, including international taxation mechanisms, to try to generate a much higher volume of resources that are much needed. But I look forward, President Adesina and African Development Bank, we have been strong partners in the context of the climate investment funds, and I look forward to that strong partnership in the Green Climate Fund and partnering in the context of IGA as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Batilda. Let me come to you, Mark Gallogly. Thank you very much for your keen interest in AGIA, and thank you for your contribution of a $5 million. Please put your hands together. I gave a $5 million grant to the project preparation vehicle, and you're doing due diligence now with Africa 50 and on AGIA and all that. So thank you very much. Can you tell us what drove your decision to contribute this grant to AGIA project development, and how do you see building green infrastructure in Africa and what we can do together?
So I've been an investor for about 30 years, and the core issue, I think, in looking at this market, this continent, is that equity leads. You need equity dollars. And the earliest stages of equity are early stage project development dollars. I've given this capital because Alain told me to. That's one major thing. But really the core thing is that the organization said they were committed to three things: being mandated to focus on this specific area around climate, mandated to focus on early stage projects. If you're a general partner, you have style drift to the easiest things to make money in, and early stage projects are not easy to make money in. So you need to be mandated to have that capital. The second is the capital needs to be committed. IGIA needs to raise a bunch of money, so if anyone has the capacity to commit to this, they should really look at it. You need the money committed. And then thirdly, and the president of Ghana spoke about this, Alexia spoke about it, as did Alain earlier, the capital needs to be nimble. So if you have mandated, committed, nimble capital, nimble means that you can't have too many layers of decision making. You can't have too many investment committees. You can't be like most DFIs where you have to go to your board, your investment committee, governments, or in the United States, the House and the Senate. That does not make you nimble. Those are the issues that are necessary, and that's what Alain has assured me will happen in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I want Alain speaking more to people. So thank you very much for that. And let me come back to you, Dr. Tar from the Badia. You are also a great supporter of AGIA from the start. Can you tell us why and what can Badia do together with AGIA?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to really commend your leadership, President Adesina, and also to tell how BADEA, the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, is committed to support Asia. And we had excellent discussion with Minister Hott, who, as it was said this morning, is really the right choice to lead this institution. So we believe in, at the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, we believe in the need for our economies to green our infrastructure and also to develop more green economy and green infrastructure. BADEA has been involved in green infrastructure for more than 4 decades. It has been working in this area. More than 60% of BADEA's financing went to infrastructure, and the bulk of that was in green infrastructure. This is why we are really fully committed to support Asia. And in this regard, we have already officially written to you to confirm our commitment to join Asia. But also, we are committed to put resources, concessional resources, in Asia. And very soon, our board of directors will adopt the financing which will go to Asia, and then we can announce the figure. But I can assure you that the board is fully supporting our involvement in Asia and also providing significant resources, concessional resources to Asia.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My brother Ekwe, you are the same. You are a big believer in this initiative from the start, in supporting Africa 50, in supporting the Secretariat of the Special Envoy. Thank you very much. What are your views and perspectives in terms of green infrastructure and the role of IGEA and how we can work together with you at the bank?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President. Thank you for having me. I would like also to thank the Special Envoy and the way he's been managing this initiative. It's a tremendous initiative. And naturally, BOAD, West African Development Bank, had no other choice but to support. And as Mark said, when Alain and Amadou comes to me, knock at my door, I don't think that I have any other choice but to say yes. So now, yes, we're still cooking the numbers to finalize the figures, the magnitude, but we had no other choice but to say yes, to approve and to support. Why? The first reason, President, and you know it, we've been discussing this a number of times. As you can see, we are creating a momentum in Africa. Something is happening in Africa. Naturally, under your leadership, you're a hell of a leader, and it creates a momentum in between us, together with my brother Sidi from BADEA, TDB, and others. So there's this momentum and this idea by which, again, I don't want to come back to the five sectors we are focusing on, but naturally, infrastructure is among the top of our list. Grid infrastructure, because we're not working for us, we're working for next generation. And naturally, so everything that is green, that is sustainable, naturally is on top of our priority. So we are crystallizing efforts, joining our forces. And when my neighbor here, Mark, said that capital was of the essence, I'm not sure you phrased it this way, equity, yeah. This was music to my ears, I can tell her. And they all know me about this. Since I joined the institution, I've been fighting to make the whole world understand that you cannot enhance the development of our country without capital, which is long-term funding. It allows us to raise long-term funding. So the question for us is, first of all, do we have a vision? Yes, we do. We know where we're heading to. Now the question is, second question is, do we have the capitals, the means for the battle? Yes. You have been supporting BOAD for its capital increase. So I had no other choice but to support you when it comes to inject capital in this type of initiative. And the third thing, it's last but surely not the least, is our capacity to execute for impact. We want results, impact. And I think that, yes, we have the vision, yes, we have the capital, we're raising capital, because again, capital is of the essence. Yes, we have the capacity to execute and then to impact our population when it comes to job creation, which is very good for the budget, fiscal tax. You know, it's a true positive circle. Raising more tax, putting people at job, and lowering domestic external debts so that we rely less on external partners. All this is very positive. So again, that will be my conclusion, President. I don't think we had any other choice but to say yes.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. La même chose pour Madame Françoise Lombard de
The same question goes to Madame Françoise Lombard for Copaco. You're a very important partner for Africa 50, the African Development Bank.
et la relation avec AGEA.
What do you think the relationship with AGEA will look like? Thank you, President Adesina. I'm honored to be able to speak to you today. I'm here on behalf of the AFD Group. I'm the General Director of the private sector subsidiary for the AFD. And I think it's very important to remember that when it comes to financing green infrastructure, we have to go beyond these public-private categories. We need to look at infrastructures, and that's where we've been able to move beyond this black and white approach, private versus public financing. This is fully included in the Proparco strategy. We're working on financing PPP projects, and all the different entities of the group can intervene. The AFD upstream, Expertise France, our latest subsidiary, can also look at how to create the proper framework to build PPP structures, and then downstream, Proparco will be there to finance
également pourvoir à une certaine assistance technique.
To sometimes provide technical assistance in the execution phases of these projects.
Évidemment, on parle ici non seulement de projets verts, c'est très bien, mais
of course we're talking about green projects, and that's well and good, but green infrastructure projects are actually the bedrock for a sustainable growth. That's how we can tackle poverty. You can't create new jobs, you can't create growth without access to energy.
sans un accès à l'énergie propre.
And of course, without access to green energy and clean energy. And I think that's something we have to keep reminding ourselves, because this is a prerequisite.
En la matière, donc ne l'oublions pas ensemble.
So I think it's important to have that in mind. However, you can finance green infrastructures in many different ways. We've talked about the huge infrastructure projects today, but I think we have to remember that there are smaller scaled, small-sized, medium-sized projects which should also be financed, because they meet different needs, they are tailored for some specific contexts. I think it's important not to replicate the same models and schemes everywhere. We have to be inventive and maybe sometimes aggregate projects in a given platform because they don't have the proper size to be financed otherwise. They don't have the same access to finance as big-scale projects. Proparco also knows very well the different markets. We have a proper expertise of what is the national context, and that's also very important. We have to support local financial system in order to finance green local infrastructure in Africa.
Le directeur général du Trésor,
the Treasury Director General Emmanuel Morin, he's said it already. We're very happy about this initiative because when you look at the different bottlenecks in Africa, there are different factors that come into play. Risk perceptions, of course, we've already talked about that. It's probably biased, but it exists nevertheless. Other factor, a return on investment that is deemed to be too low given the risk. Here again, we can say that these are biased perception, but unfortunately, the private investors are very often talking about that, even if we are, of course, trying to tackle these perceptions. Then financing maturity. To finance these long-term projects, it's important to remember that these have to be long-term projects, especially if you work on if you want to develop green infrastructures that are resilient. We'll have to include more and more the adaptation dimension to our projects. It's important in Africa, and that's only possible if you take a long-term approach. And then finally, investment readiness, project preparation, creating a conducive environment for such projects. And I think the AGA initiative is a great response to that challenge. It's a huge challenge that we are faced with. We have to have a cross-border approach throughout Africa, and I think it's great that such initiatives are great, and therefore we fully support.
Please, thank you very much.
This initiative.
Please have your seat. Thank you very much. Please have a seat. And last, 4 people I want to bring up is Francois Lombard. Please, I'm sorry, Francis, Philippe Valaou. Philippe? Yeah, please give me a round of applause as he comes on board. Andrew Johnston. Eric Scotto. I think that's pretty much it. Huh? Yes, they're the final one. And then because you are the special envoy, I throw you over here. You can say a few words before we close up. So, Minister Maruhot, please come right up. Let me start with you, Philippe. What are your perspectives about AGIA and partnership that we can develop together?
I'm assuming this works, yes. So thank you very much, President Adesina. As you know, we came to COP27, and we're at the launch of this initiative, and very much look forward to being at COP28 to announce specific results in terms of funding. For us, who have been developing and doing that early stage project development you referred to for the last 15 years, we know what the former speaker said a few minutes ago, that it's the scarcest part of capital in the equation. And so for me, to the extent that there's another player that can come with significant cash on the table and the ability, as you say, to leverage that to 10 billion is welcome news, because there are not enough developers providing that risk capital. So we very much look forward to working with Alain, Amadou, and others over the coming months so that we can see how we can actually come in as a active participant in the AGIA initiative. So thank you again, President Adesina.
Thank you so very much. Let me ask you, Andrew, what are your views on that?
Well, President, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm sort of wearing multiple hats at the moment. I'm here representing both a private sector fund manager that mobilizes capital into the early stage of project development using blended finance focused on renewable energy. I'm also here as an investor in these type of projects and an active sort of project developer and talking to the trials and tribulations of the difficulty of developing projects. And also, thirdly, I'm representing AFIDA, which is African Infrastructure Infrastructure Developers Association, which is an organization we started about 3 years ago to try to convene a safe place for developers to come together, private sector developers, but also infused by DFIs and MDBs, to talk about the issues facing development and also to form a forum to convene money around. So it's fantastic to see this all sitting, this new initiative to create a macro ecosystem for these initiatives to all coexist and for us to work collaboratively together to mobilize for a common purpose. So it's great to be here.
Thank you very much. Eric Scotto. Yes, please. What are your perspectives about AGIA?
Est-ce que je peux m'exprimer en français?
Ah oui, très bien, oui. C'est bien.
Alors, je vais faire quelque chose qui ne se fait pas. Je vais résumer les
I'll try and sum up the 3 previous roundtables.
Si vous le permettez.
Okay, allez-y.
If you allow me to do so. During these different panels, many different things have been said. The president of Comoros said it would be very important to develop his country for sovereignty reasons. He talked about sovereignty, about food sovereignty. He talked about energy sovereignty as well.
Des choses fait que depuis 2007-16
And
mon entreprise a développé
the fact of the matter is that since 2016, my company has been working on the island of La Réunion and has been able to develop all these technologies. These technologies do exist. They are competitive. They are the best way to generate electricity today, and in the most affordable way. Africa has plenty of resources. We are lucky enough to have access to a lot of different resources. The president of Madagascar talked about the climate issues.
Ça fait des années qu'on a installé à Madagascar.
In Madagascar, we've installed retractable solar panels. When the cyclones come, we can fold these solar panels so that they are not destroyed when a hurricane or a cyclone comes, hit our shores. We've talked about difficulties to finance certain projects or countries. The US Secretary of State talked about great project. We do have good projects. We have financed a project in Mali. It was not the easiest, the simplest to finance. However, for years now, every month, EDM, Énergie de Mali, is paying its bills, and that's 50 megawatts that is fed into the grids in a region in the country. So you see, those technologies exist, and this type of initiative can provide more energy sovereignty. And why are we not making headways? Larry Finn from BlackRock was saying this morning there are a lot of money in pension funds and insurance companies, but unfortunately this money is not available in Africa. So what do we want now? Maybe a mechanism to reassure pension funds and insurers so that they can see that we can have great projects in these countries and it can be more profitable.
Absolument incroyable. Donc il faut qu'on arrive à
There are great resources, and we have to make sure that these finances are allocated, earmarked for Africa. And it's not just for Africa, it's for our planet. We do need to step up, to scale up this momentum. So if you can provide us with guarantee, that would be great. We have to be innovative, creative when it comes to financial mechanisms. And we should have more than a handful of companies working on the continent. You need to join us and be fully aware of the fact that we can change things very quickly.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much.
And I'm glad you're back from Mazda. What are your perspectives on AGIA, and how do you look to partner with AGIA on green infrastructure in Africa?
Thank you for inviting me to the stage.
First of all, let me give a brief introduction of Mastar to those of you who don't know us. We are the largest, we own the largest renewable energy developer in Africa after the acquisition of Lekela. And we have been investing in the continent. We're one of the very first investors in the continent. And I think the AGIA initiative is a very exciting initiative. We are also supporting a similar initiative, which is called the Energy Transition Accelerator Facility, which is an IRENA-led initiative, which ambition is to create bankable projects and accelerate their development. And I think in that perspective, the learnings that we have obtained in the process is something that we can contribute with to the AGIA initiative, and we think that this is a very, very exciting step in the right direction. If you look at renewable as an investment segment overall, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion here about green infrastructure. I think it's important to note that renewable energy is not like other green infrastructure. It's actually, and this is because the technology costs have come down so dramatically, and renewable energy is now the cheapest source of electricity in very large parts of the world. So if you have a project which is delivering electricity to the grid at, let's say, 40 euros per megawatt hour, and the grid consumer is paying 100 for the electricity because you have a deregulated electricity market, that project, in principle, should have a very low risk, regardless of what the risk rating of the country is. So we think that there's a lot of potential for renewable energy in Africa. But if the conditions are put right, and if the regulations is designed in a way which is allowing for the risk mitigation that can be achieved by these natural market mechanisms that we see in other countries. So all in all, very excited about your initiative. Very, very glad to be part of it. Very happy to be here today, and very optimistic about the future.
Thank you. And speaking of the future, we have my special envoy, Amadou Hott, who's done all the work, working with Alain Ebobuse, and also the African Union, putting all this together. And what does that future look like?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The future looks very bright. And we are hoping that by the COP28, we'll have some serious commitments so that we can achieve financial close. Some of our partners are already doing their due diligence. Some have already committed certain amounts. For example, Mark Gallogly with his $5 million grant. And we are accelerating our discussions with everyone so that we can achieve that goal. I want to thank, Mr. President, all our partners who are interested in this initiative, who want to invest in this initiative. Some of them are here in this room, some are outside. International partners, but also our regional African partners, including Badea and Beowade. Both are in advanced due diligence, hopefully to go to their board in the near future to approve some good investments. Mr. President, allow me to thank all the teams that worked on this round the clock to make it happen. The head of my office, Khalifa Sarr, he's here. He's been working with Alain's team, with the rest of the bank's team, everybody to make this happen. Mr. President, thank you for your support and for your leadership in showing us the right directions. And we'll get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the end of a very, very exciting time together discussing green infrastructure. Let me just say that what are the things that I heard in this conversation? That we actually have an opportunity for Africa to build its infrastructure in a different way, building it green and greening already brown infrastructure to make them to be quite resilient. That we have a vehicle that allows us to do that in a way that's market-driven, that also makes sure that investments go to projects that can be executed with speed, with less bureaucracy. And that platform, of course, is AGIA. Third is that we have strong commitments in this hall from everybody about this particular work. When I started in the morning, almost 2 hours ago now, I asked for three things. First, is that we should mobilize political support towards around AGIA. The second is to have financing support in terms of those that are going to invest, whether it's project preparation, whether it's project development, and those that could help also as developers, that many of you are, in executing that. That we were able to see, and that we were able to get. And finally, it's very, very clear that we need to get this now to a closure. At its first close, as Amadou said, that's what that future looks like. And that future will be landing us at COP28, ahead of COP28, I hope. Well, thank you all very, very much for coming. Thank you for everybody that organized this. Thank you for staying with us. And Kevin Urama, VP Kwanyo, and so on, everybody that worked. Thank you very much for coming. Let's make it happen. Thank you. Oui, merci beaucoup.
Please, we have got another event here organized by the African Union. So I would kindly request that you take your seats. Ours will be shorter.